Hello, good evening, and welcome back to another live edition of The Social Club, brought to you by tvsportsblog.com. Hello, good evening. Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast brought to you by AMS Media. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and thank you for joining us for another edition of The Social Club, the show in which we talk about a variety of subjects from the English game, as well as touch on some of the hot topics surrounding Arsenal as well. Big hello to everybody who's watching us live at the moment. Get your questions in, get your comments in the live chat, and we'll come to as many of those as possible throughout the broadcast. And of course, a big hello to those of you watching or listening back to the show later on. Joining me as usual are my wonderful panel. First of all, welcome back, Mr. Simon Alavi.
You good? How are you?
Not bad, my friend. How are you keeping?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Look nice and relaxed there. I'm slightly envious. I'm sitting on an uncomfortable chair. Also, a big welcome back to the one and only Dan Luca. How you doing, mate? Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm all right, Harry. How are you?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Cracking on. You know how it is. Keeping busy as we do. Right, it's the Social Club. We're back and we're going to be talking about a variety of subjects. First of all, this week, we're going to start on the relegation zone. Now, of course, it's a huge weekend coming up for those involved in the relegation battle. Of course, Norwich are down. You've got Bournemouth, Aston Villa, all with a fighting chance still. More so Aston Villa, actually, of getting out of the bottom three, because Villa and Watford, of course, have only played 36 games each, whereas Bournemouth have played 37. Let me share the Premier League table with you all on your screens for those of you watching us on YouTube. And I want to get the thoughts of the guys in terms of who they believe will avoid the drop. Starting with you, DeLuca, how do you see this playing out? Of course, as I've said, Norwich have gone. Bournemouth still have a chance. Villa have a chance. Watford suffered a really damaging defeat, potentially, I guess, at West Ham the other night. How do you see this playing out?
It's the goal difference is really tight. Normally, you look at it at this stage and you're talking about weird sort of swings, but Watford have got Manchester City and Arsenal. Even a 2-0 defeat each gets them basically relegated if the other team can just win a game. But before the season started, being the genius as I am, I did tip Bournemouth to get relegated out of nowhere. Well, people forgot they were a mid-table club. So I'm going to stick with Bournemouth, and I'll quite smugly congratulate myself when they go down. Aston Villa, obviously, you know, they've got 2 games, haven't they? You wonder whether with Arsenal in the FA Cup, whether that might just take the attention away and they can steal a point there. But are they gonna win a game? I'm gonna go for Aston Villa to escape and Watford to get sucked in. I like an underdog. I like a bit of a punt. So I just look at that and I see Watford have got 2 games they should lose, which take the goal difference out of play. So really, I'm backing Aston Villa to win 1 football match out of 2. So I'm going to say Aston Villa are going to claw their way out of it.
Well, of course, Aston Villa take on Arsenal, as you've said.
They got West Ham there, haven't they? Last game. Villa.
Yeah, they have. And of course, Watford, they play Manchester City and then Arsenal on the last game as well. Alavi, how do you see this playing out? It could have been tighter, really, couldn't it? There's that little bit of a buffer between Villa and Watford at the moment. I'm not sure. I mean, I know it's only 3 points and there's 2 games to go for those 2 sides, but I think you've got to back Watford.
DDL's right, and what you reckon? I think Villa will go down. I think,
but I don't know. Based on the fixtures, I just think it's in their favour.
I know what you mean, and if you look at pure games they should win, you would look at those games and you go, okay, Watford are going to lose to City, Watford are going to lose to Arsenal. And when you look at Villa and you go, Villa are going to lose to Arsenal, but they should be able to beat West Ham. You would expect that the 2 games Watford play and lose sequentially means that they would be of a goal difference of -4, and that would be eradicated. So Yeah, it would appear that.
It's
But
just,
for
so
me,
the question becomes, are Villa going to beat West Ham by more than they lose to Arsenal?
So this is it. So it all comes down to, it comes down to two things. How badly, first of all, do Watford lose those two games if they do lose them? Because if they lose 1-0 each, then it could become very tight. The second is, do Villa definitely beat West Ham?
This is a really weird.
And for me, the big thing though, as someone who gambles, Dan, is you can get 3-1 on Watford right now, and that is big. To go down,
yeah, it's big.
And that is big. But I'm going to put my neck on the line, and I'm going to say that Watford stay up, and I think the two as they are will stay there. And I've just got a sneaky feeling that Watford will get something out of one of the two games, because this always happens in football. Something that isn't meant to happen will happen, which is one of Villa won't win the one game they should win against West Ham, or Watford will not get beaten by both City and Arsenal. Something will happen. One of them will field the weak team. There'll be an injury. There'll be rest of players for FA Cup. City might even have the Champions League to start to think about. So I'm going to go for that 3 to stay as it is. But if you genuinely fancy Watford to go down, DDL, then I'd be looking at those.
Yeah, odds. I think there's two things here. Like, so I like a punt, as you know, and I want Bournemouth to go down because I tipped them pre-season where they would have been long odds, and that's another one in a long line of my absolutely genius predictions that span back at least several seasons. So I want Bournemouth to go down. It looks like they will. After what Watford have done to Nigel Pearson, even though it's not that bad, really, but we'll get onto it later, no doubt. I kind of want Watford to go down as well. It's a weird situation here where I think Aston Villa, they would prefer one game instead of two. You know, it's like, we'll win our one game 1-0, and then we need Watford to lose 4-0, which is feasible. In a weird sort of way, to add to that point, let's say Aston Villa get a point off of Arsenal, just for the sake of argument. And I know people listening to the show, are going to be, thinking I'm on the wind up. But as a sake of argument, let's say Villa get a point at home to Arsenal, which isn't inconceivable. Arteta, surely in the last game against Watford, then would completely rest his team, because he'd have nothing else to play for in the league. That would be done. There'll be no finish in 7th because they'd have dropped those points. So then he's going to completely rest his players ahead of the FA Cup final. Exactly. So it almost screws Villa up in that way. So all the signs say that Villa are gone, and the psychological blow of losing that late goal to Everton, which probably would have made them favourites to stay up. But I really want Villa to stay up. I really want Watford to go down. So that's a good enough reason for me. What better way to start a debate than just, going straight with the heart?
That's it. Well, the thing is, isn't it? It's interesting because it comes back to that old debate, and we've seen it in title races and races for the top 4 in the past. It's, would you rather have the points or the games to play? And in this situation, Aston Villa,
they've got the same. It's the same. They've got the same. It's not it's who they're playing, essentially.
Yeah, but Bournemouth have only got one game left. Bournemouth have
but between Villa, I think Bournemouth are down, surely.
Yeah, I think they're probably.
But between Villa and Watford, it's essentially points against who you're playing, isn't it?
Yeah, and like you said though, you can't rule out something unprecedented happening, like Watford picking up points against Arsenal or against Manchester City. There's so much to factor in here. That brings us on nicely to what's actually gone on at Watford, because of course Nigel Pearson has been sacked with 2 games to go. It came after, of course, Watford were beaten at the London Stadium by West Ham United. It was a game that I commentated on, actually, and it was a game that, at half time, I couldn't understand how West Ham was so far ahead, because they didn't actually play that well. They just had certain moments and they took their chances. And all of a sudden, Watford were in the shit, basically, and had it all to do. I think it was probably a little bit harsh on Pearson if the reason they've sacked him is because of that result. It's clearly had a big bearing on it, because he was in the job until that result came up, and they haven't decided to pull the trigger earlier. But Dan, you have spoken about the Pozzo family on shows in the past. Normally, they do get it right, to be fair to them. And if you were a Watford fan now, how would you be looking at this? Would you be feeling an injustice for Nigel Pearson, or would you be looking at this and thinking, well, actually, they've served us quite well in terms of what they've done. Let's just trust in the process.
I think it depends on the morals, doesn't it? I mean, Watford have been promoted a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. They've had good seasons. They've attracted a couple of decent managers. They've had good managers, and they've got rid of them. Every time they've got rid of them, it's premature. So if you're a Watford fan, at this point, you just want to stay up. But if you stay up, what's going to happen next year? Every time they lose 5 games, they're going to sack a manager. They're never going to achieve any kind of stability that gets them away from this position if they carry on operating in this way. I don't feel the situation is desperate, and I don't see what they're trying to achieve, because if you look at that last performance like you discussed, that wasn't a performance where I'd say the team played badly. It wasn't a performance where I didn't think the team were playing for the manager, because they come out in the second half and they put on a really good show and tried to claw their way back into a game, which was a lost cause, and they played really well in the second half, so they were fighting for the manager. And it wasn't even a situation where the manager wasn't brave enough to make decisions, because he ripped 2 players off the pitch at half time and replaced them and did something different. So there was nothing in that game that says you should sack him. And actually, he was brought in to keep them up. They were adrift. He's basically kept them up. So what were they expecting him to do? They would, when they sacked their last manager. They've sacked so many, I can't remember who it was. Who was the last manager now? Was it Flores? Flores. It was Flores again, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? Yeah.
No, Garcia first. They sacked him after 4 games, didn't they? Having reached an FA Cup final. Then they brought Flores back, and after 10 games, they binned him off. So they brought Pearson to keep him up. He's basically achieved that. So I could understand partly they sacked him and brought in, I don't know, Sam Allardyce for 2 games. But they've replaced him with Hayden Mullins. So
yeah, but that's only for 2 games, though.
Yeah, but that's the only reason they're getting rid of him, is for these 2 games.
Said this is no. They've said this. Yeah, but they've said this is not a long term.
Yeah, no. But what I mean is, Nigel Pearson's the manager. His contract was only till the end of the season anyway. So essentially, they were going to, at the end of the season, they were probably going to bin him off, whatever, because they wanted a different manager. Okay. So what they're basically saying is, we're going to get rid of you because we're so sure we're going down if we don't change it. So to get the point we need in one of those 2 games, or the 3 points we need in one of those 2 games, we're going to go to Hayden Mullins. Well, who's worked that out?
I've heard that there was an argument the day after the West Ham game.
Okay.
And it's an interesting point you made about the tactical changes he made against West Ham, because I agree he did. But one thing that a few fans have occasionally said about Pearson is that he is rigid. He doesn't make too many changes to the game during the game. He doesn't adapt his shape. He stays with certain players and backs them completely. And this is something that, and I rarely praise a Match of the Day pundit, but there's something Tim Cahill said on Match of the Day too, and he said that when a chairman brings a manager in, they have what's called a mandate in their mind, i.e. this manager is for helping me avoid relegation. This manager is for helping me build a club, play attractive football and go into the top 10, etc., etc. And he thinks that Nigel Pearson has filled his mandate, which to establish them and avoid relegation, and that in their eyes, they've already avoided relegation, and that argument just...
why not just wait the 2 games?
Think that. Correct.
Wait the 2 games. It's contract games.
So I think... So
but then
I
does that
think
suggest...
the argument must have tipped that. So I don't know if he wants to give time for someone to come in, a bit more time. I don't know. I really don't. But if you look at replacements, they're looking at Harry's mate at Brentford. They're looking at the Croatia manager. They're looking at Steven Gerrard possibly. Who's favourite? Former Spurs and Newcastle guy.
Chris Hughton.
Chris Hughton, that's the one. He's favourite. Like,
Chris might go.
They're not pulling up. They're not like pulling up trees. Like these players.
If you were Steve Gerrard, would you go there? Harry mentioned the fans, right? Harry mentioned how do the fans feel.
No.
Watford are at the bottom of the division, have been for all season. They were struggling at the back end of last year. They had a cup run that distracted them. Those 2 things sometimes go hand in hand. You go on a good cup run, you league form suffers, fair enough. So to address that, they're going to need new players. If you are a prospective player who has the choice of joining Watford or another similar club, are you going to join Watford where in 8 games' time the manager who signs you is probably not going to be there? 10 games after that, it's another manager who might not fancy me, and now I'm a foreigner who's coming from another league, living in another town, and the manager who's brought me to the club isn't going to be there, and who knows?
But that's fine. That's fine, Dan. If you're Steve Jeter, but if you're Toral, say former Valencia and Villarreal manager, you don't really care if you go there and you don't get it right after 10 games.
The thing is, guys, is that when you look at Watford as a football club, a lot of people criticise the way they've acted in terms of their managers, but they have been punching above their weight. I know this season's not been great, but they have, as a football club, in the last few years, I would say, been punching above their weight. And so whilst we can say that we have sympathy for Nigel Pearson and we have sympathy for some of the other managers that have lost their jobs along the way, actually, if you take sort of the emotion and the morals out of it and you just look at, as a business model, have Watford achieved what they needed to, i.e. stayed in the Premier League for a period of time, then, you could argue they're a championship-sized club, Watford. And so they are, to a degree, getting it right. But it's just this whole approach, isn't it, that makes people feel uneasy at the way they operate.
I think until they go down, they've got it wrong. So they're not wrong until they go down.
The problem is, though, to me, it's unsustainable what they're doing, because now they're going to struggle to attract players at some point. There's an argument. You look at the 5 teams we're talking about there. Let's throw West Ham into the mix. Yeah, so you got Watford, West Ham, and the current bottom 3. The 2 who are probably going to stay up, even though I tip Watford to go down, but the 2 who are probably going to stay up are the 2 who change their manager, and the 3 who have gone down are the 3 who isn't. So there is a case, if you're in the bottom, you change your manager to freshen things up and try and get a reaction. Well, Watford have done that. It didn't work. They've done it again. It has worked, and they're binning him off 2 games early anyway. And there's going to come a point where they're not going to attract the players they need to get them out of the shit. They're not going to attract the man, or they'll bring in a mercenary of a manager who turns up for a payday. It'll work a little bit, but it's unsustainable, because sooner or later you need players. And why would you join Watford?
Well, I guess while they're in the Premier League, they're offering competitive salaries, aren't they? Let's just take a pause a second and go over to some of our live audience. And I've got an interesting question actually coming through from Callum Ferguson, which I want to put to you guys as well. Let's just quickly have a look at the Nigel Pearson comments. Kev O'Sullivan on Twitter says, I hope Pearson protected himself financially at the beginning. If you're Sarr or Decore looking at this, wouldn't you want to move for stability? Omar says, Watford have a disgusting board. They deserve to go down. What else have we got here? Archangel says, Watford are a horrible, pointless club. Marble Halls TV says, Watford is the same size as Palace. Palace are seemingly stable in the Premier League. I would actually argue that Palace are bigger than Watford in terms of their fan base, for sure. I'm not sure how to pronounce this one. SHFA TADS says, I've got no sympathy for Watford. Agree they are a championship side. And St. Colombo says the Watford owners need sacking. So there's plenty of sort of fighting, I guess, in Nigel Pearson's corner about this. But this brings me on to an interesting question that we've had come through from Callum Ferguson, which I'm going to bring up now. And I'm going to get you guys' take on it. Of course, from the teams that we expect to get relegated. So we'll include Watford in this. We'll include Bournemouth. I probably will cut the line at West Ham. So let's talk Watford, Villa, and Bournemouth. Okay. No, Brighton are safe. Brighton got a result tonight. They're safe.
Oh, of course.
They're safe. So let's look at Watford, Villa, Bournemouth, Norwich. Out of those teams, who would you take for your sides out of the presumed relegated teams? So, Dan, I'm going to put this to you from a Spurs perspective. Who would you take? And then, Alavi, I'm going to ask you if you were a manager floating around the Premier League, who would you take? I'm going to allow you to.
There's one obvious one, but everyone's going to say it. But go on.
Got Luca.
Yeah. So you want me to go first? It's quite a tough question, actually. It obviously depends on the side. It depends on the problems and all that sort of stuff that side have got. But I'm a Tottenham fan, as previous listeners would know, and if you haven't listened before, then unlucky, and if you don't listen next week, then shame on you. But Spurs and Arsenal have got a similar sort of problems. But the answer to this question should be none. You look in the past, Spurs have signed Sebastian Bassong, Moussa Sissoko from Newcastle after they've been relegated. Appalling, absolutely appalling. If you've been relegated, there is a reason. And if you very rarely people are looking at Jack Grealish and saying, well, he's a top player, we're going to spend big money on him. And I look at Jack Grealish and say, well, you're a good player. Now you've been relegated twice. Are you good enough for what I want? And the answer, if you've been relegated twice and you can't lift the side to finish above Brighton, that's not good enough. So really the answer should be none. But in terms of where I think the question is, are there any good players in and amongst those teams? I think there is a dearth of good central midfielders in the league, and I think Decore could do a job for somebody. Yeah. I quite like the fullback at Norwich, not Max Aarons. Everyone likes Max Aarons. I prefer the left back, if I'm honest. I think he has they both do, if I'm honest. They have the qualities of modern fullbacks, and they're both pretty young and would be cheap. I'd take a punt on them. I know a lot of people would look to Todd Cantwell, but I don't see anything in Todd Cantwell for me that thinks he's a top 6 or 7 player. Timo Pukki is about at his level. So, and the obvious one that I'll leave to Alavi is a centre-half who used to play for Chelsea. But outside of that, there's nothing there that really impresses me. Ryan Fraser's already left Bournemouth. Adam Brooks looks like a handy little player. I think Callum Wilson's had his day. So for me, I would look at the 2 young progressive fullbacks from Norwich and hope that a decent manager who played an attacking brand of football, which Tottenham don't have, could do something with those. I certainly think Arteta could do something with those fullbacks, and maybe Decore to shore up a central midfield. I think he could be worth a punt.
Alavi, over to you.
Yeah, when I said the obvious one, I think everyone probably thought I meant Jack Grealish. I didn't. I meant Nathan Aka. I think is the guy who I would. He's the one I think. Give him a chance. Don't forget, like Van Dijk was at Southampton, and people say, "Oh, can he do it at a top level?" I'm not saying Nathan Aka will be anywhere near that, but he certainly belongs to the top 10 for being up. I put him alongside someone like. I think he's as good as someone like Lascelles. I really do. Decore, I think, could do a job for a team that stays up just based on his energy and his pace. And I take Dan's point about Jack Grealish. I wouldn't take him at any of your clubs, although they are just about top 10 clubs. If I was an Everton, if I was a Wolves, I'd probably take Jack Grealish at 30 million or something. But yeah, the one that stands out for me is the one I originally aforementioned. Nathan Ake for me. And he's been he's got an injury, right? So that's been quite noticeable.
Yeah,
I think
and same as we're forgetting one. Delafeu, does he count? That's a big one, surely.
Oh, don't near me.
That's a shout, no? No.
It's
but if you're going to pick
because...
hold on. If you're going to pick the most talented player in those 5 teams, you cannot tell me the most talented player amongst that is not Delafeu. This is someone who Nigel Pearson's win rate with Delafeu was something like 1.5 points per game, and as soon as he's been injured, he's had a long-term injury, right? It's gone to less than 1.5 points per game. So. That's no coincidence. In terms of talent, you cannot tell me this is more. And forget Jack Grealish. Delafeu is the most talented player in those 5 or 6 teams. And I mean, he's the Iranian guy at Brighton.
He's got footballing ability.
But does he do it week in, week out?
There's a reason he's playing at Watford, and that's no disrespect to Watford. Everyone's got to play somewhere, but it reminds me of when Stoke had a blueprint of how to play football. And they signed all these talented players who got kicked out of Barcelona, and they wondered why suddenly they got relegated. And I made the joke on one of your other pods about doing it on a cold night in Stoke, but that's a problem when every other game is at Stoke, and that's why they went down. And Delafeu, for me, I mean, if Callum's question is, I'm going to presume Callum's an Arsenal fan, and his question is, who would we have at Arsenal? Delafeu is getting nowhere near that Arsenal team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's a.
It's a good question. It's a great question.
There's a very clear ceiling for Gerard Delafeu at the moment. On his day he's brilliant, but he doesn't produce anywhere near often enough, in my view. If you're asking me from an Arsenal perspective, it's really, really difficult. Nathan Ake, yes and no. I'm not sure, is the honest answer. I've never been sure about Nathan Ake, despite sort of a lot of people sort of singing his praises time and time again. In terms of the fullbacks, I think Luca's right from an Arsenal perspective. Somebody like Max Aaron, I think Tyler Roberts is the other one. There are a couple of decent players that you could see potentially developing. Jack Grealish, I'd love to have at Arsenal. But the more I look at the way Mikel Arteta sets up his team, and I know at the moment he hasn't got the players necessarily to play the way he probably wants to play further down the line. But I think the way he's sort of utilising Lacazette in the last few weeks as a false 9 makes me think that there isn't room for a number 10 in the Arsenal side. There hasn't been a number 10 in the Arsenal side for a good couple of months now. And so that makes me think twice about investing such a large amount on somebody like Jack Grealish, where maybe we'd be better served signing somebody else in a position that we're probably a little bit more in need of. Let's go through some of the live comments. Again, plenty of live comments, guys. Keep them coming. Thank you so much. Let's see what we've got here. Marble Halls TV says Grealish, Decore. I'd probably have Decore as a squad player. I think he's got all the physical attributes you need. I think he's got a lot of drive. I think he's got a lot of power. Question his technical ability, maybe, in certain situations. And I think that would be more evident in a team like Arsenal or in a team like sort of higher up the table who are looking to play in a certain way. I'm going to put it like that.
He couldn't play at Arsenal. He'd lose he'd lose the ball every time.
Yeah, I think
he couldn't play at Arsenal, man.
There are question marks about him, aren't there, for sure. Saint Colombo says, I'll take Brooks from Bournemouth. Rajiv Kumar says, disagree. And I'm not sure which comment specifically you were disagreeing to, mate, but he says, Hull had Robertson. Yeah, probably. He said, Hull had Robertson and Maguire. Sometimes the chemistry between the players is non-existent, hence why some players can't show.
Yeah, he's got a point. What he's saying is like, Nathan Ake's not going to stand out because he's playing next to some, Steve.
Yeah, it's because
do you know what I mean? No.
It's because I said really the answer should be none. You should be, if you're a top side, which is where Arsenal and Tottenham would like to be, and they're a little bit short at the minute after a really poor season. You shouldn't really be dipping into the basement for players who, I'd like to think like, if Harry Kane or Aubameyang joined Watford wouldn't be relegated. So you've got to decide: do you want to sign players who would bring the team up, or players who would be a cheap addition for us? So I take your point.
I think if you've got him down on his, if you've got Nathan Ake on your bench, right, and you're a Spurs or Arsenal fan, and you think that's not an acceptable bench player to come on in case one of your centre backs gets subs, I think you've got an overinflated opinion of where your team should be finishing in the league. Yeah,
and I did say there that Ake, I left Ake to you at the end there, and he's one who I would, he's the one who stands out of that group. And the point that the lad made there about Robertson coming from Hull, he is an absolute great point. Fantastic player, signed for £5 million from the Championship. Maguire, again, a good player. I would say
I think he's shit, to be honest.
I would say Maguire is still extremely questionable if he's a good enough centre half for a team who want to go on and challenge for stuff.
He is the captain of Manchester United. I absolutely hate Manchester United, but even I can admit they are a huge, huge football club who deserve a better captain than fucking Harry Maguire.
The guy. He's not terrible.
Sorry,
he's not terrible.
No,
did you watch the game yesterday?
Yeah.
I'd say Lindelof was worse from the highlights.
I think that. Trust me, Maguire.
And my question is Ake going to be better than Maguire?
Definitely.
Probably.
Yes.
Probably, but how much?
Not by a lot. But he can play.
Anyway, guys, let's.
Do you know what? If I was an Arsenal fan, I would genuinely have wanted Chelsea to lose. I would have wanted Chelsea to win last night. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because, like, to Harry's point, like,
we'll come.
You always got to look at the. Yeah. Go on.
We'll come on to that in a bit. Let's quickly finish off on the comments around the players they'd like to see. Ross Morgan says Cantwell from Norwich is a tidy player. What else have we got here? A few of you saying that that Ake is on his way to Manchester City. We've got a couple of those comments coming through. I'll be honest, I've probably missed that rumor today. What else have we got here? Kev O'Sullivan says Ake in a back three would be interesting. Yeah, I think he's probably one of those centre backs where probably looks a bit better in a back three, where he can be a little bit more, I guess, brave and showcase what he's actually good at, which is probably having the ball at his feet as opposed to the other stuff.
Yeah.
Big up H, thank you very much, mate. And he's absolutely right when he says slap a like on the button, you freeloaders. That's right. If you're watching this show and you haven't hit the like button yet, why the hell not? Please do. And don't forget to give us a subscribe if you haven't already. Right, let's move on to our next topic of discussion. And it comes obviously after the second-rate FA Cup semi-final. We'll talk about the first-rate one in a bit. But let's start off by talking about someone who's stolen all the headlines for the wrong reasons. And it's Manchester United's Spanish goalkeeper, David De Gea. The question is, and Alavi, you've been a massive fan of David De Gea over the years, and rightly so. He's been a very, very good goalkeeper. Is he finished, though?
He's not finished because, look, even though I'm going to admit that he hasn't looked himself in the last year. The reason I don't think he's finished is because there's no accountability with him. He's not culpable in any way. He's the only player, certainly goalkeeper, I can remember for some time and whether you do your fantasy team or you're guessing Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's next team selection, he's the only player you think if he can make 5 mistakes, he's still starting the next game. I'm pretty sure Ole's already come out and said, he's still my number one. So what he has to do to not be number one, and you get this in any walk of life, or a job or a relationship or whatever it might be, if you have that just risk-free approach where, look, I can do what I want, I'm still going to be number one.
Yeah, but
I do think he's got a bit lazy. I don't think he's finished, no, because I think that the same reasons that I back Luiz in certain and De Gea is almost, they mirror each other in the sense that I think that their positives and what makes them good occasionally does lead to their mistakes. So I'm sure we'll talk about someone like Luiz later, but David De Gea is a keeper who, he's not like a Schmeichel or a Seaman who stands up, an old school keeper, strong, firm. He sort of jumps very early and he saves quite a few of his feet because of that, and he gets a lot right. And when he gets it wrong, he's just gone too early, and it looks like it's a ball he should have, a ball or a shot he should have saved. So I do think it's a style thing with him as well, that actually, if the game yesterday, he actually made quite a few amazing saves that style permitted him to make. I don't think he's at the level he was a few years ago. I do think maybe he's complacent. I think he's maybe won quite a lot. How much more does he have left to win, certainly domestically? So who else are they going to bring in? Are they going to get the kid?
But what I found so interesting about this was he's played Sergio Romero in every other round in this competition so far. And yesterday, when it was abundantly clear that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was prioritising the Premier League in terms of the players that he left out, I found it surprising that when you're leaving out the likes of Paul Pogba, Mason Greenwood, who's been in excellent form, Anthony Martial, why you would then decide to then play your first choice goalkeeper and leave out Sergio Romero, who's done really, really well throughout this competition. So that didn't sit right with me. But also another caveat that we should add in before I go to Luca is Brandon Williams, the fullback, has got away with absolute murder there for that Chelsea second goal, because that is an awful pass. It's a criminal pass. It's a suicidal pass.
How about Lindelof for the first goal?
The pitch. And Lindelof as well.
And how about Maguire for the third goal? That was an own goal. Why is he getting the blame for that own goal?
But no, he's not. De Gea is not getting.
It is. People have said all three are his fault.
I think that he's culpable, definitely for the second and probably for the first as well. I think he.
Yes, but not the third. No way.
No, not the third. No way. But I guess the point I was trying to make is that once De Gea made that first sort of mistake, the spotlight was on him, and Brandon Williams has played a stupid pass across the pitch, which Mason Mount's picked up, And in fairness to De Gea, he's probably looked at that passage of play and gone, yeah, I've got a few seconds here. I can switch off for a minute. And all of a sudden, Mason Mount's having a shot from God knows how far out because he's picked up a loose ball from Brandon Williams. And, the defender's young and he's inexperienced, and I get all of that, but he's had an absolute free ride on this. And I think that maybe De Gea has taken some of the slack that probably should, or the criticism, I should say, that should be going his way. The Luca is... I'm not going to say it's De Gea finished at Man United because we know that Ollie's going to stick with him. And given the contract he's on, and I think he's got 4 years left on his deal, if I'm not mistaken, he's not going anywhere. But in terms of David De Gea as the world's best goalkeeper or one of the world's best goalkeepers, do we have to stop saying that now? Is that done? Is he finished at that level?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely he is. And should he be finished at Manchester United? Yes. He is finished at Manchester United. How long the manager wants to pretend he isn't is up to the manager. And there's a reason for it. Just, your point there about switching off for a few seconds. Let's go back to the best goalkeeper in the world. Yeah? Let's talk about, mentioned him a minute ago, Aubameyang, Kane. This week, Aubameyang, 3 chances, 2 goals, no switching off. You're not allowed to switch off. If you're at the top of your game, no switching off. Simple. Kane, Leicester, strolling around the pitch because he's about as fit as me. 2 shots, 2 goals, game over. No stopping, no switching off. Top level, world-class people do not switch off. David De Gea is not that anymore. Back to the goalkeeper.
I think what David De Gea does go down is the next game he's just going to pull off 4 absolute worldies, isn't he?
I could look through
what he's got in his locker.
Yeah, but I could look through this season alone, and I could find 10 goals that he's cost without trying. That is too many for a top level goalkeeper. It doesn't matter. You've got to save shots that are going straight at him. It doesn't matter who's in front of you. If you're letting look, you got to dispel that myth. So over the years, there's been many good goalkeepers, people who have been called good goalkeepers, who have let in 80 goals a season. It's not the fact that he's conceding goals. People will acknowledge if there's a shit defence. Mark Poom, Russell Holt, Thomas Kuszczak, all these players who were held in really high regard as really good goalkeepers, even though they were shipping 60, 70 goals, will acknowledge there's a shit defence. It's still probably the 5th or 6th best defence in the league. It's better than Tottenham's defence. It's better than Arsenal's defence. It's better than every team from position 11 down's defence. It's not a terrible defence. It's just a bad defence at top level. He's letting in goals that are going straight at him that he should save. So the Brandon Williams bit, he'll get away with it. De Gea in his first season was terrible. You forgive him because he's young. Brandon Williams will get away with that. De Gea is now a top professional. This is the thing with goalkeepers and why he's finished at Manchester United. All goalkeepers make mistakes. Not as many as De Gea has made this season or last season. It's going back 2 years now. With goalkeepers, it's all about consistency, confidence, and the visualization and perception of how you play. Once a goalkeeper makes a high-profile mistake, every other mistake gets highlighted and dragged through the mud. And that's just how it is. David De Gea made that high-profile mistake. He made it in the World Cup 2 years ago against Portugal on the biggest stage. David Symeou made one against Ronaldinho. After that, he was done. He was still the best goalkeeper Arsenal have had. He was still a fantastic goalkeeper. He had probably been making mistakes a year or two before that as he was on his way down. But you get away with them because you've got credit in the bank. Once that big mistake is made with all the cameras on you, everything after that is done. Paul Robinson, when he used to make mistakes for Tottenham, he was a fucking dreadful goalkeeper, trust me. He was horrendous. I used to sit in the stadium and look at people. I'd be like, have you seen that? No, it wasn't Robinson's fault. It's fucking Robinson's fault. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. Then he makes one for England, and after that, every single one he mistakes, the knives are out, the cameras are there, and they get amplified. That's not going to go away for David De Gea for as long as he's at Manchester United.
But do you not think David De Gea does enough during games that still warrants and justifies?
No, not anymore. No, not anymore.
Because yesterday or Saturday, whenever it was, he made 6 or 7 really, really good saves. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Brilliant. He's made 2 mistakes. They've lost the game by 2 goals. That's it.
And get a good defence, and those 2 aren't going in. They're not even chances created. Yeah,
but how good a good defence are they going to get? They've spent 60 million on a right back, 80 million on a centre half. That's the defence. That's your defence. So are you good enough to save shots behind it? Because the shots have come straight at him. Let's have it right. Just the goals that have gone in have come straight at him. So do you want a defence that doesn't let the other team shoot? Because you're not going to get one of them.
You don't just become bad over a year or two. He's going, all right, I admit he's gone for a long bad patch. I have only seen you two both annoyed at one opposition goalkeeper in your life, and that's David De Gea, Harry, Arsenal versus Man United 3-1 December 2017.
Yeah, he made a ridiculous amount.
Just furious. And you, DDL, about 2 years ago, when you said, why are we playing against spider legs? And you started writing to the FA that shouldn't be allowed to have a David De Gea in goal opposition. So the only two times, and it was
but we're talking about now, though. We're talking about now.
And what I'm saying is, you do not lose that ability that made him that good.
The cons
you do.
are clearly now outweighing the pros with David De Gea, but it's happening too often.
You lose
we said about Van Dijk, just like we said about Nathan Ake. You put a couple of decent defenders in front of him, and he'll go back to how he was.
Yeah, but
do you want to take that risk?
But the main goal that we're focusing on yesterday, when we're talking about David De Gea's mistake, the second one, you're never going to have a defense that can stop someone having a speculative effort from 30 yards out. Yeah, nobody's going to do that. That is a howler. That is a howler. There's no excuse for it. He's even got down to the ball and he's just lapsed in concentration. And the problem is that, yes, over the years, David De Gea has earned Manchester United a hell of a lot of points. But now he's in the minus. He's starting to cost them more than he's earning them. And that becomes a problem. Yeah, as well.
This is going to sound really harsh.
Go on.
No, go on, Harry. Sorry. Go on.
I was just going to say, like, we talk about, like, Alavi said it was a stylistic thing, and that's absolutely right. I think we've said this before. I think there are two types of goalkeepers. I think there's the modern progressive goalkeeper, which is the sweeper keeper that comes out, that plays the ball with his feet.
Very agile.
Yeah, get a very good shot stopper. And then you've got the old school goalkeeper. And just taking it to Arsenal for one split second, just to make my point, I think part of the reason that Arsenal have become a lot more defensively sound in recent weeks is not because Bernd Leno's a crap goalkeeper, but it's because Martinez is that opposite type, where he's a big, old school, traditional goalkeeper who comes and catches things. He plays it safe, and that calmness, it filters through into your defense. And if you've got an erratic goalkeeper behind you, like David De Gea at the moment, then as much as I think Maguire's shit, and I think Lindelof is crap, and I think Eric Bailly's okay, I suppose, and Wan-Bissaka can do a job defensively, etc. You'll never build a defense around a goalkeeper who is so erratic in his form and makes so many high-profile errors. And at that previously, De Gea was making these errors, but he was also earning them points. It was so clear. But now that's evening itself out, and you can't afford to have a goalkeeper who constantly lets you down on the big occasions.
How long do you leave it? So stylistically, David De Gea is a very special type of goalkeeper. He's very unique. Okay, David De Gea used to make a disproportionate amount of saves with his feet. Why? Why does a goalkeeper save with his feet?
He dives early. He's not confident with his hands.
Right.
It's like when one of us goes in goal when you're like 12.
Yeah.
You just
save a good goalkeeper, obviously. But yeah, so he's saving things with his feet. Why? Why is he saving things with his feet? Because he's not confident with his hands. It's like having a pair of sunglasses on a bloke with one ear. Like, you're a goalkeeper. You need to lose your hands. If you're a forward, you lose a yard of pace. If you're a goalkeeper, it doesn't matter. Suddenly you're doing everything with your legs. Now, you notice the type of goals he's letting in. There's been 2 since lockdown. One against Arsenal, one against Tottenham. Straight at him. Not using his legs. Can't get down with his hands. He's in a place where he doesn't know what the right decision to take is. So how is he gonna fix that? Is he gonna start saving with his legs again? But the point of the matter is he at Manchester United, like Joe Hart put in some of the best goalkeeping performances I've seen in the last 10 years. There was one against Bayern Munich. He was absolutely ridiculous. He was beyond ridiculous. He was unbelievable. Look how quickly he disappeared off the face of the earth, because he made that high-profile error for England in a big tournament, and everything after that went downhill. And that's where David De Gea is. That's the reality of it. He's made his big error. Everyone's looking for his errors. He makes more because the confidence is down, and it's a never-ending cycle of doom that has affected thousands of goalkeepers in the past, and David De Gea is just the latest in a long line. He might go somewhere like Ben Foster, who is now looked upon as a really, really good goalkeeper. But at Manchester United,
do you know what? I
he's
considered him when you said that. In that question earlier, I thought about would I take Ben Foster into like a top 10 team as a backup keeper.
I think.
Yeah, I would.
I guess what DDL's point is that at times that hesitation in terms of not knowing whether to go with your hands or your legs just loses you that split second, doesn't it? Sometimes, and he makes it too late. Alavi, let's move on to our next topic, and I'm going to let you start off with this one. And we're going to talk about a little bit about the semi-final between Manchester City and Arsenal at Wembley. We've covered it on today, this morning, if you're watching us live, our edition of the Chronicles of Aguna. So do check that out if you haven't seen it already. But the question I want to ask Alavi, then I'm going to bring DDO in, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the semi-final in general, is David Luiz, a man mountain? For those of you listening, he's putting his arms up in the air.
Apologies for Alavi, a man who backed Arteta on before he'd even managed a game, and even more so, a man who has backed David Luiz for nearly a decade. An absolute man mountain. And what I think it shows is the fortitude of a guy like that. You have to think that mental character to go from what was City was the first game, right, where he made those mistakes. The same set of players he's playing against, and he's gone from that to where he is now. It was an unbelievable performance, and people look at stats and they go, "Oh, he's made 11 clearances and 6." It was how vital those clearances were, and the fact that he suits exactly the style that Arteta is trying to infiltrate into Arsenal, because he is whatever you say about him, he is comfortable with the ball, and I saw many occasions, not just on Saturday, many occasions he wants it from the defender, he wants it from the goalkeeper. How many passes from that first goal? 18, 19? He's the one who's comfortable. Don't think like Mustafi's like Franco Baresi or anything. It's David Luiz who's the only one who's properly comfortable on that ball in that free. I don't know about Tierney, if I'm completely honest with it, but from memory, when Kolasinac ever plays there, as I said, he's not that comfortable either. So I think we all recognise that he has football ability, okay? And we all recognise that he does have the ability to defend when he needs to. But the question has always been about his character that leads to mistakes. And you cannot question his character. This is a man who ruptured his thigh just before the Champions League final, played through the pain. A man who went and lost 7-1 to Brazil, and then became the world's most expensive defender a few days later. What he did on Saturday was, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm sure I'll get vilified by Mr. DDL, I have not seen a better centre-back performance since we've come back from lockdown in domestic football. That was unbelievable. And if you're going to criticise him like every other pundit has, then at least give him his dues when he pulls out something like that, because he took all the blame against City. So if you're going to... I never said he never made no mistakes. I've said he's made no mistakes. But exactly what I said about David, what makes him make those mistakes, when it goes right, is why he's good. And you take the rough with the smooth. And that was brilliant on Saturday. Everyone ate their words. It was brilliant.
I think, look, as an Arsenal fan, I thoroughly enjoyed David Luiz's performance at the weekend. I thought it was spectacular. I thought... What was the best thing about it, though? I mean, we spoke about David Luiz a few weeks back, didn't we? After the Manchester City game when we got beaten and he was at fault. He came out, he gave an interview to the press off his own back. He came out, he fronted up, and he made a complete and utter fucking mess of the interview. He started talking about his future. I think he came out with the right intentions.
But he came out.
Yeah. That's the point I'm getting to. He came out with the right intentions, but he sort of started digging himself a deeper hole with some of the fans, because some of the comments were a little bit like, you shouldn't really be airing this in public. And then he's fronted up again on Saturday after an excellent performance, which he's entitled to do. And he's, the reporter said something to him like, the team have faced a lot of criticism about the defense. And he goes, no. He goes, you can say it. He goes, I've faced a lot of criticism. You can say it, he goes. And he was that's what I love about David Luiz. He said football's about surviving. Football's about, he you can tell that this guy is so mentally strong in the sense of he can make a mistake, but he believes in himself so much. And you can only love and only admire the way he's brave enough to take everything on his shoulders. That doesn't for a second mean that he's the perfect defender, though. He does make a lot of mistakes. I think we all agree that he's a lot more comfortable in a back three than he is in a back two. I think his ability to progress the ball forward has helped Arsenal a lot. Do I think, as I've said before, do I think Mikel Arteta goes to bed every night and dreams of a defence with David Luiz in it? Probably not. But he's using what he's got. And if David Luiz can pull out that, and it might not always be to that particular level, but if he can pull out a positive performance on the majority of the times he plays, then he's an asset. The Luca, are we just getting a bit carried away after one performance? Is this someone who's going to come a couple of months down the line maybe and bite us in the arse again with another high-profile mistake, in your view?
Well, yeah, he will. And like Alavi says, you take the rough with the smooth. So we've all acknowledged a couple of weeks ago that there's plenty of rough in there. If you're asking me about the performance on Saturday, he was absolutely excellent, superb, brilliant performance, top quality leadership. I don't question the guy's character. I never have questioned his character. I mean, anyone who gets kicked out of 6 clubs, he's going to have a lot of character. He put in a really good centre-half performance. Am I surprised he put in a good performance? No, I'm not. He's got good performances in the locker. I did, for those who were fortunate enough to be on the show 2 weeks ago and had a DDL tactical masterclass free of charge, I did say that David Luiz doesn't look as good inside pass the ball out and play for the back. I said David Luiz's best season in the last 8 was when he was playing for Antonio Conte and he dropped deep in a 3 and was allowed to clear balls all day with his head. Guess what he did on Saturday? Dropped deep in a 3. He was defending about 10 yards out on average. He had a bank of 4 in front of him. He had 2 guys by his side within arm's reach. They weren't observing social distance in that back 3. And all Man City really could do was cross balls in, and he's in his element all day. Bang, 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 head them all away. That is David Luiz at his peak. Do I believe Mikel Arteta wants to play long term? No, I don't. Therefore, do I think David Luiz is going to be in his element more often than not? No, I don't. So, is his costly performances going to outweigh his good performances? Yes. Having said that, he proved his worth to the squad. He proved Alavi right when Alavi said, you may as well... Steady. He proved Alavi right because Alavi said, you may as well sign him for a year. The reason I said you shouldn't sign him for a year is because there comes a time you have to play him and he makes a mistake in that occasion. However, if Mikel Arteta is a very clever guy, completely outcoached Pep Guardiola on Saturday.
We'll come on to that in a minute. Save that. We'll come on to that in a minute.
If you found a way, if he's found a game, if it's 6 games a season, 8 games a season, where Arteta is going to employ that tactic that Antonio Conte employed for a year and won a league with a pretty average Chelsea side compared to previous Chelsea sides, if I'm honest, then there you go. You've got your man. Added a year to his deal, no drama. So Alavi's absolutely been proved correct in that respect, and fair play to him. Really good performance.
Well, thank you, Dan. Do you know who praised David Luiz on the eve before the game? Pep Guardiola. If you look up into David Luiz, he just goes, I don't understand why.
Is this Pep Guardiola who knows so much about centre halves that he hasn't managed to buy one and plays a midfielder there? Brilliant.
That's a good point. Dan, actually, let's go to Alavi first because I feel a rank coming on from Dan. Which
I'll just go straight to Dan.
Will be a perfect way to. Did Mikel Arteta out coach Pep Guardiola? Did his inside knowledge of the way Manchester City like to operate play a part? Did it help him? And were you surprised to see Mikel Arteta get one over his old boss?
Not surprised. I mean, I texted you both the games saying in a shootout, 8-1 for any team is huge odds. The bit I'd probably disagree with you there is it's not an inside secret now how to beat City. It's quite a well-known secret that you don't have to be with Brain of Britain to figure out. What I would say is Arteta is one of the few managers who's got the balls to to play that way to beat him, because there's a difference between doing what, say, Burnley would do and doing what Arteta did on Saturday. And if you can't, it's like DD always makes the point about, people calling Italy boring and defensive, but they don't see the tactical nous of what he did. And that's different to what Sean Dyche did and what Arteta did. I mean, look, I rate Arteta highly, but what I like that he's done is he didn't beat Pep at his own game. He took what he knew Pep would do and changed his game. And I thought it was just, I like Pep, but I think Arteta could really go somewhere. And I actually don't think he'll be at Arsenal that long. I think Arteta could be snapped up in a couple of years. If you think like Barca or Madrid one day, a few years come calling and he's going to be at I'm all right with Shotgun Mustafi over here, mate. It's not going to happen.
I think it's a little bit...
Go on, DDL.
Before we come on to DDL, I absolutely adore Mikel Arteta. You guys will know that from the first press conference that he gave as the Arsenal boss. I remember clearly. I think I recorded a podcast
it's brilliant.
straight after it, and I was like, I was just taken aback by this guy, and I've really, really backed him. And I've, there have been some decisions in some games where I've looked at and I've gone, not sure about that. And I think he has made some mistakes, but I think he acknowledges that as well. And it's also very important, isn't it, to remember that this is his first job. So sometimes you have to just cut him a bit of slack and just let him get on with it, and he'll learn along the way. And as this team develops, Mikel Arteta will continue to develop. What I like about Mikel Arteta, and I love the tactical tweaks and the changes and stuff, and the way he makes us adaptable, and the way we are adaptable, but we still don't drift away from what Arsene Wenger used to
philosophy.
Yeah, from the values of the club. And what I've loved most of all, above any tactical change, and this sounds like the most basic thing, and I don't think I'd be saying this about another club. I think you only really understand this when it's your own club. And that is that every player is giving 100% all the time, that every player cares, that every player knows that their position in the team is at stake. And if they don't perform, it's gone and they'll be out. And I love the way that Mikel Arteta has handled certain characters. He's shut people down. He's shut the press down at times when he's had to, when questions have sort of been going off in a direction that he probably doesn't want. He shuts things down. He seems very stern, and I don't think anyone expected that from someone who was quite a timid player, I would say, in terms of his aggression. There wasn't really any aggression in Mikel Arteta. He was probably the most unaggressive defensive midfield player in an Arsenal side you've ever seen. So I love to see those things, probably because they've come as a surprise to me. But Dan, you fully believe that Mikel Arteta did outcoach Pep Guardiola at the weekend. You're not Pep Guardiola's biggest fan, but
no,
the stage is yours, my friend. Tell us why, and give Pep Guardiola a kick in while you're at it.
So there's two extremes to this, right? So the first point, I don't want to take anything away from Arsenal at all. Arsenal were excellent. Arsenal did exactly what Arsenal had to do. And Mikel Arteta, to go with your point, I believe in Mikel Arteta. I think he's fantastic. I don't think he's had a brilliant first 15, 20 games if you weigh them all up, but he's experimenting. You can see what he's doing. And he's someone, and there's a few people like this in the game, but Mikel Arteta is someone, when he speaks, I believe him. If that makes sense. I believe him. If he tells me...
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah? If he tells me, I don't support Arsenal. I don't really care what Arsenal do in the politest possible way, but if he tells me, if Arsenal give me money in the summer, I will achieve this, I believe him. He makes sense. He has a plan and he knows exactly what he wants to do. And he's in control of everything, every situation.
And even if he doesn't believe it, he makes you believe it because he says it in such a manner.
Yeah, in such a convicted way. He looks like a class act, and good luck to him. On Saturday, he completely outcoached Pep Guardiola. Now, I don't like Pep Guardiola. It sounds ridiculous. I can imagine people typing away in the comments saying how ridiculous I am. But he's never really overawed me as a manager. He's achieved some brilliant things, but 90% of the things I would have expected, if I'm honest. But on Saturday, what Mikel Arteta has done is he's completely ripped him to shreds and embarrassed him. He's exploited his weaknesses in every possible sense, in every area of the park. And I texted you guys at halftime. Pep Guardiola is a coach, but he doesn't have any tactics. The most wasted phrase in football is he is a manager. You know, you hear fans say it all the time, oh, he hasn't got a plan B, without knowing what it means. If you want to know what it means, watch Pep Guardiola's career. He hasn't got a plan B. His plan A is to buy the most expensive players, control the possession because better players will score more goals than shit players. It's pretty obvious. And his only tactic is, I'm going to play a higher line than the opposition, so we've got the ball more in your half. And if you happen to break my higher line, I'm going to tactically foul you, probably not get booked because you're so far away from the goal, and we'll go again. You're playing against Arsenal. With the greatest respect, Arsenal have got one excellent player and a few good players, a few bad players, and some players who are slightly harshly treated, and they're probably better than people give them credit for. But there's one excellent player.
David Luiz is, yeah, agreed.
I'm going to go with Aubameyang on this occasion, right?
Oh, sorry.
So they got one. So if you're Pep Guardiola, all you have to do is work out how to deal with Aubameyang, and you've pretty much won the game 99 times out of 100. He doesn't manage that. Arteta sets up his tactic to suck Man City in because he knows exactly what they're going to do. Ping the ball through the channel to Aubameyang, who's going to skip away to his heart's content, past his ridiculous high line and tap in a goal, and he could have had 3. And it was the most perfectly executed plan. Now, Arsenal, I did say in lockdown I thought Arsenal would win the FA Cup. I don't know why, I just had a feeling, and you know, they probably will. But you know, I'm not impressed with Arsenal beating Manchester City. I'm impressed with the way Mikel Arteta did it. I'm impressed with the tactics that were employed. I'm not impressed with the result. I said to you guys at half time when you messaged me Manchester City's odds, I said there is no way I would back Pep Guardiola to come from behind. Because quite frankly, the guy hasn't got a clue how to come from behind. Because he very rarely has had to. And he's too arrogant to look at another team and see what they're doing. He's more worried about how his own team, with all the billions of pounds he spent. And we've got to face facts about Manchester City this season. They've stunk the league out. They've been absolutely appalling. Liverpool have won it an absolute canter, and Manchester City were the team who had to challenge them. They were the team placed to challenge, and they haven't done it. And, you know, Arsenal have beaten them, but we've got to face facts here, right? Manchester City have lost 11 games this season. They've spent the best part of £1 billion. They've lost 11 games. They've lost 9 in the league. No team in the top 4 in Italy have lost 9. No team in the top 4 in Spain have lost 9. You have to go down to 6th place in Germany to find anyone who's lost more than 9. They've lost an abnormal amount of football matches, and it's because Pep Guardiola has not got a clue how to manage when the chips are down. And it's flat track bully, okay, is where we are with Manchester City now. They are an easily beatable side by any top team and a top manager. And Mikel Arteta is proving that he's on the course to be that. And he's done it with, you know, not the best set of players in the world, but tactically, it was fantastic. And you look at it properly, you look at the bigger clubs in the league or the teams doing well. Okay, Manchester City, they've beaten Leicester twice. Okay, well done. Fantastic. They've lost to Liverpool. They've lost to Chelsea. They've got 1 point from 6 against Tottenham. They've lost twice to Manchester United. This is not an extraordinary result for Manchester City this season. This is a predictable result when they're coming across a team who know what they're doing with good players in it. So I've gone a little bit easy on Pep today because no, honestly, I'll be honest with you, I am quite a respectful guy most of the time, and I'm on an Arsenal show with Arsenal fans, and I don't want to take away from what is a fantastic win for Arsenal, and you know, a memorable evening in a pretty average season and something to look forward to. I don't want to take anything away from you by slating the opposition. But you are looking at...
I think you would say it, whoever it was, though. Like, to be fair, you've always...
you would.
So
You
you have to give...
Yeah.
You give Didier that one, right?
Yeah, but this is a manager, you know, he only plays in this one little tick-a-tack way and hopes it goes well. To the point, everyone looks at them last season. I thought last season they were absolutely blessed with the cup runs. It sounds ridiculous slagging off the team who did the treble, but they were absolutely blessed with the cup runs they had. I think the hardest team they had en route to either cup final was Oxford. You know, until they got Chelsea in the final, that was as tough as it got for them. So you know, pretty straightforward cup runs for a side who have spent that much money. So they managed to get knocked out. They got knocked out of the Champions League to Tottenham, right? And this is the important point. They won the league last season on this ridiculous run, and there was a defining moment in their league title run, and it was when they couldn't break Leicester down, and the title was slipping away from them, and Pep Guardiola refused to change his ways to find a way to win that game because he's so stubborn. And it got to the point where Vincent Kompany was so pissed off by what he was watching, he smashed a shot from about 42 yards and picked it in the top corner because he couldn't fucking stand to watch the team tippy-tapping about anymore, and they won the league by that way. Manchester City, that team has come to its end, and the only way Pep knows is to spend a shitload of money to get out of it. That's facts.
Let's I forgot what I was going to say now.
Sorry.
Lost. No, that's fine.
We all have.
I need more wine.
No, I've remembered it. It's come back to me. Just the final point, because we've already run over an hour, but the final point, DDL, is if Pep now goes on and wins the Champions League, and he's won the Champions League and the League Cup, finished second in the Premier League, are we all going to look back and say, why on earth are we criticising this guy? Because, I mean, Liverpool fans, I always hear from Liverpool fans. So I've had conversations with Liverpool fans where I've said, how do you feel like, you're not in the FA Cup, you didn't go very far in the League Cup sort of thing, you're out of Europe. Yes, you've won the Premier League, but does it disappoint you that this team, who are supposed to be, in your opinion, one of the very best, the greats as they would call them, are only going to end up with one trophy? Whereas the great teams, don't they? Some of them anyway, they go on and win multiple trophies. And Pep Guardiola's sides have proven that they can do that. But Liverpool fans...
We said this, we did answer this in the season, I think. I remember DDL was posed that question.
Liverpool fans always reply by saying, but we really wanted the league. But can you not argue that in Manchester City's case this year, that if they were to win the Champions League, not only would it be the first in their history and a massive moment for the club and silence all the people that say Pep's not won it since he left Barcelona, etc., etc. Add to that, it'd be a massive up yours to UEFA. Wouldn't that, I guess, gloss over what's been a disappointing Premier League campaign? Wouldn't he deserve some credit if they went on and done that now?
It would obviously gloss over it. Does a manager deserve credit for winning the European Cup? Absolutely. You'd have to just like I'm crediting David Luiz for a really good performance. You'd have to credit a manager for winning the Champions League. With Manchester City squad, draw aside, you would expect Manchester City to get to the last four without a sweat. So he's got to win. Therefore, he's got to win one two-legged tie in normal circumstances and a cup final on a neutral ground to win the Champions League with the money he spent. It sounds harsh, but there's a cycle of big clubs who constantly make the Champions League semi-finals. There's only like 4 different clubs who've won it in the last 8 years or whatever. So Manchester City should be there or thereabouts every season. So they need the manager to get over the line. Pep Guardiola has
in the season though. Dan, when asked what was if he does win the Champions League,
my answer was yes.
I have to just drop it for this season and start again next season.
Yeah,
and that gives him the buy for the season. I remember you saying it.
Yeah. My answer was yes. My answer now is I would still give him credit, but it plays perfect. I don't think he'll win the Champions League. By the way, I don't think he will. I think Bayern Munich would absolutely annihilate Manchester City. I think they'll lose the semi-final over 2 legs to Juventus as well. So I've given myself 2 outs there, but I think Bayern Munich, if they get past Juventus, Bayern Munich would annihilate them, and that's Bayern Munich who have just had 2 months off. That's my opinion. But it plays into his hands because Pep Guardiola, because what I've said about Pep Guardiola is I think he's tactically inept in match. In the coaching ground, he clearly can coach to a style, but he's tactically inept. And you've only got to look at his record over 2-legged ties to realise quite how inept he is. He lost to Tottenham over 2 legs. How do you do that? Honestly. The way he played those 2 legs was absolutely...
I think. Normally.
Yeah, it was absolutely appalling. He was outplayed in both games, if I'm honest. Poor tactics, absolutely appalling. He lost the year before to Liverpool over 2 legs, and they were about 30 points below in the league. He's won 2 Champions Leagues. One was against Chelsea in the semi-final where they should have conceded about 7 penalties and somehow still escaped with a win. This is a guy who cannot manage over 2 legs. It's as simple as that. So he's got an absolute golden pass. He's only got to play 1 game to progress. I don't think they'll do it. I think there's better teams than Manchester City in Europe. I think there's better managers too.
Interesting. And we'll be bringing you coverage, of course, of the Champions League and reaction to the remaining fixtures once that gets back underway right here on the Social Club. And you can see who DDL will be rooting for already. Right, that brings us to the end of another edition of the podcast. A massive thank you to those of you who have tuned in live and joined in with the conversation via the live chat box. To those of you listening back later on, and to those of you watching the video on replay, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And as you'll see at the bottom of your screens, if you wish, you can become a patron of the Chronicles of Aguna, and you'll receive access to exclusive content that nobody else gets. As well as that, we're kicking off our Patrons podcast, where each week I'll be inviting a handful of patrons to join me to talk about all matters Arsenal on our very own edition of the podcast. And of course, once you've been a member for 3 months, you will receive a free gift. So plenty to look forward to. We're going to be back bright and early with another episode on Tuesday morning, looking ahead to Aston Villa versus Arsenal at Villa Park. Of course, a huge game for Dean Smith's side and Arsenal in terms of their hopes of finishing in a Europa League spot. So plenty to look forward to. Good night. My thank you to Alavi. My thank you to DDL. And until next time, take care. Ciao.